And I want to welcome everyone to this new Energy Crew podcast with me, your host, JP Warren. And I am recording this on the road in Denver, Colorado, beautiful city, great history here, great history in the energy space, the oil and gas space. And obviously got to represent here. We've got a crew club event tonight. I want to thank everyone there for tuning in. If you are enjoying these this new batch, this new round of Energy Crew podcast, please make sure you share, like, subscribe, help get the word out there. It helps just kind of expose it to other listeners out there that may not be in tune with this. And I'm excited. I'm pumped to announce our guest today, who this is his second time around on the Energy Crew podcast. And the first time we discussed, I learned more about kind of his company, kind of the history of his company. And I think for those that have tuned in or clicked this and are curious on who this is the one and only CEO of CNX Resources. I believe it's CNX Resources. There's so many different. I should have done this. Anyway, I'm bringing Nick. Nick, why don't you take this over? I'm kind of all over the board. It's 11 o'clock there, 9 o'clock here. I'm trying to show up. Nick, why don't you reintroduce yourself for those that are out there? And I apologize about flubbing that up. So go ahead, Nick.
No problem, JP. Good to be with you, and good to see you again. But yeah, it is CNX Resources, and that's what happens. We're coming up on 160 years next year. So when you've been around that long, you get different nicknames or names along the way as a company or a corporation. So no apologies necessary.
I think for those of our listeners that are tuning in right now, I go back and check out the first conversation that Nick and I had. It was such a cool dive into 160. Was it 160 years, something like that?
Next year, yeah.
Abraham Lincoln was president. I thought that was just so fascinating to hear, just kind of who they are in the community, how they've grown, where they've kind of expanded and also contracted to focus on kind of core units and kind of what they do for the community. So I highly encourage everyone out there to check out that first episode that we had. And Nick, I think having you on right now aligns with kind of what we're doing on the Energy Crew podcast. The past couple of guests that we've had Brian Walker with Shoemaker Advisors. He's up in DC. He works in the lobbying realm of space in the energy industry. So it's for me personally, I'm not a political person. I think each person has their own kind of whatever. However, there is some sort of disconnect with realities and expectations going on, which is why I've been so kind of pulled towards this side of just our industry and kind of the discussions that are happening here. Before that, we had Ryan Keys on, who was kind of putting together this group to talk about emissions and kind of give the operators a voice in the emissions discussions before it's kind of released into our industry on how we need to operate. So again, empowering operators. And who else we have? The other podcasts we have Energy Facts Chats with Mike Umbro. Nick, love to get you on that. I know you just talked to in California, but again, that also is here to bridge the energy expectations with energy realities and poor energy policy. And Nick, you are such an advocate for our industry. And every time people, question about, who do you follow? It's like your name pops up. Chris Wright pops up. Y'all are passionate about our industry, passionate about domestic energy. And that is kind of why we're talking here today. On Energy Crew, we've shifted the focus on kind of these candid, just kind of, hey, who are you? Introductory conversations. It's kind of more of a focused, passion-fueled conversation. What makes you tick? What keeps you going? So, Nick, thank you for joining us. Sorry for that long intro. That's what I got to do to kind of connect all the dots to kind of get the combo going. So, thank you for joining us, Nick. And you've been, how you been?
I've been busy, but good. That's always a good thing. And what an interesting time, right? With our industry, our space, where the world is. It's just unbelievable the number of significant and big moving pieces that are out there today at this moment.
And so there's a lot of areas where people can get information, whether it's through Alex Epstein, whether it's through Chris Wright's building better human lives, whether it's through yours. Before we get into the kind of the gist of this conversation, do you mind kind of listing where they can find your information? Because you put out such great content, not just from a personal perspective, but also from a community perspective on what y'all do. And I would love for you to touch on the CNX kind of the academy that y'all have there as well. So plug where kind of people can find your information on kind of where they can link up with you.
Yeah, we've got a multifaceted approach, I'd say. So certainly The classic websites are always going to be great sources of information, sort of like the source rock, so to speak, for a lot of this. And there's the company website, the CNX Foundation and the Mentorship Academy, which is a big piece of the CNX Foundation. It's got its own dedicated website. And then I've got my own, nickdeiuliis.com, that is sort of the, like I said, the source rock for all the different types of content and commentaries that we create. And then there's social media, on Twitter, LinkedIn, of course. If I'm not connected to the listeners out there in the industry, happy to do so. But Twitter and LinkedIn are probably my two most active platforms on social media to get content and to see what's sort of on the mind at that moment. And then the company sort of parallels those types of advocacy avenues on those platforms as well. So I'd say, the traditional websites, the Twitter accounts or X accounts at this point, and are probably the best places to go for the current information and content.
I love, and honestly, I'm not just saying this because you're a guest and we're talking right now, but I love your content. I love, certain people in this industry are very inspirational to me because of y'all's passions. Okay, like you, again, I'm gonna name these other people, but how y'all communicate ideas, and I guess call out the kind of the hypocrisy of the current realm of whether it's energy policy or energy discussions. Even it's that's cool. Sorry about that. Even calling out like energy discussions, and what you do, I love your approach. You hold kind of a mirror up to what's coming out of people's mouths versus the realities on which we all cohabitate on. And I love how you do that. So for anyone out there, highly recommend y'all follow him and just give it a look and kind of give it a glance over and just kind of get engaged. It's very good stuff. So appreciate what you do, Nick. Seriously.
Appreciate that. Thank you. And, a lot of this, JP, it's, we got a couple things in our advantage, right? Our industry is just a crucial one, not to economy only, but society, life itself. We do have to live in a world of science and math and physics. So that's always helpful because that puts a lot of the emotion or ideology off to the side and focuses in on just what is truth. And then, the third piece of this is the issue with regard to just getting policy right, the implications of it, the size, the impact overall. Like I said, the timing of this, it sort of all came to a head in 2023 with the stakes. And that creates a big sort of maybe risk if we get it wrong, but it creates a lot of opportunity to get it right and to get that message out on behalf of the industry.
Where are we? Okay. So obviously your passion is domestic energy. It's bringing a sense of reality to, again, it's kind of it's more of I guess an infused steroid driven energy facts chats that I have in Mike Umbro. You're bringing the energy realities to the energy expectations. You're on the table. You're laying it out there for people to see. That's a passion of yours. Giving back to the community, I feel, is a passion of yours. Even without kind of getting in a dialogue with you, just seeing your stuff, I know what you're passionate about. Where are we to back up a little bit? You're talking about 2023. You're talking about 2020. Where are we currently in the state of the industry when it comes to kind of, you deal a lot with public perception. Where are we currently right now? And what do you think is going to take us to get to that next level of conversations, of acceptance?
Yeah, I think it's good news and bad news. The good news is I think we're in a much better position as an industry to get the position out, the reality out, the science out to the public, to the individual that's objective and looking at that. We're in a much better place today than we were a couple years ago. The bad news is that because some of these realities are taking root now, right? So now we're seeing some of the failings, some of the weaknesses, some of the Achilles heels, so to speak, of the current policy musings and where we're trying to go with certain tenets of an ideology or frankly a religion, it feels like in many instances. Well, that's upping the ante. That's sort of upping the rhetoric, the emotion, sometimes the ridiculous nature of what you're seeing. And so people that are sort of adversarial to what we do and adversarial to science and the realities of these things, they're doubling down. They're tripling down. Desperate people do desperate things, right, when in desperate situations. And that means, the way I think of it, the things are going to come to a head, right? right? The kilowatt hours or the BTU balances, or the energy global supply demand, quality of life issues for the developing world. These things are not going to, they must be satisfied. They're going
Yeah,
to have to be resolved.
Right.
And then what you're thinking through then at that point is, all right, how much time, another way of saying instead of how much time, how much pain does society or an economy or an individual, because this really is in the end about the individual, how much pain and how much time does it take for realization of misguided policy to take root where we reverse or correct? Is that going to be, next week and not as much damage done, or is that going to be in 10 years after, individuals, economies, and societies are wrecked? That's where my head's at right now. I'm really focused in on how much damage will be done before societally we wake up to the realities and get back to a rational path.
So, okay, so I completely agree with you. I think something that Mike Umbro terms as the energy boomerang. We're saying, oh, let's do this. Let's have flying cars based on, whatever, O2 molecules and all this stuff, by 2050, let's do that. Let's phase this out. However, the realities of, whether it's, going all electrification or converting all this, all that, the realities to the consumer and how that's going to impact, people's wallets and pocketbooks is going to be the energy boomerang. It's going to bring people kind of back to the table to hopefully have these conversations, these discussions. But my thing is this, you're talking about, whether it's a destruction or whatever it looks like, the pain points, the pinch points. Mike was talking about, he just got back from, California not that long ago. And Mike resides out there. He was just discussing kind of like, when this does happen, California's already planning for not having any power in 2027 or something like that, and having like planned brownouts, planned blackouts. Once this stuff does start happening, once these things do start happening, do you honestly view, that's kind of like I'm putting you in a position, but do you view that people of power, politicians, all stuff would come back to the table and say, hey, people, we were kind of wrong. We do kind of need an energy mix. We don't want to phase this out. We were kind of wrong. And how do you see those conversations happening?
Very, very tough to say. Probably depends on the individual policymaker or politician. If it's someone that's a newer face, they can sort of absolve any sort of tie to those prior ill-fated decisions, then maybe they come out with the view that you just said. My suspicion is, though, again, so many individuals in these leadership positions and policy-making positions are just sort of just so deeply rooted in the belief system, the religion of what they're trying to proffer.
Yes.
There's basically no way out for them. And I fear, again, that sort of results in entrenched mentality. They're dug in, and that's going to make a course correction that much longer and that much more difficult. And in the end, when you think about this, it's really not just about the energy industry, as awesome as it is and as passionate as we are about it. And it's really not even just about a region like a Western Pennsylvania or a California or whatever region that is near and dear to your heart. I mean, this is in the end about the individual. And if you care about the individual, and when you get back to like the foundation of how America was created back in the day in the 1700s, the individual reigned supreme. It was that foundation of what everything else was built upon, from Constitution to government, checks and balances, Bill of Rights, all those things. When you get back to the individual, this is what this is all about. Because energy is something that every individual, every endeavor uses, requires, needs. And if you can provide it affordably and reliably, right, and in an efficient manner, well, then the individual, with whatever they want to be and whatever they choose, they're going to be free to thrive.
Right.
And if you throttle that, if you purposely manufacture scarcity of it, then what happens is control of the path goes from the individual to something else, whether that something else is the state, or that something else is a bureaucracy or a process, whatever that might be, right? Different things could take that place and fill that void. But to me, this is really about preserving the individual and the right of the individual to choose for themselves what they do, frankly, with their lives, not just with their careers or with their individual decision making.
It seems like such an interesting and also a difficult conversation to have. When you take the individual goals, right? Hey, we want to flourish. We want to provide for our families. We want to, afford the stuff for our families. But then you have the other side, the greater environment, the climate, religion, if you will. And that's the kind of the tough point that I have, discussing, because it is such a hot subject. And also, it's like you can't engage in regular conversation without bringing up that. And it's like, I'm not here to discuss the climate crisis or the climate global. I'm not here to discuss. I'm talking energy right now. So it seems like it is kind of a unique conversation to have the individual's rights and the individual conversation alongside the world or the global climate and all that stuff conversation. How do you intertwine those two? Because it is it's a passion subject with a lot of people.
You've hit on the two sort of opposing core themes, right? And if you think about that, so think about the individual, person by person, up to billions of people across planet Earth today, versus this abstract of the earth, right? Of whether it's climate, of the public good, right? However you'd want to phrase that. Those are two very different approaches. Now, the first, to me, is very tangible, and it's here and now. We can point to individuals all across this planet. Some of them might be, free market-based capitalists in the United States, Americans, right? Or consumers, people in the Western world. Some of them might be living in just abject poverty, right? That have the desire and frankly, the right, is an effective human right, for a better future, a better quality of life that energy or energy access will give them, whether it's in Africa or whether the subcontinent of Asia, wherever you want to look at in the world there. And there's a couple billion of them. And sometimes, this might be individuals somewhere in between those two extremes that are looking for that sort of access to reliable and affordable energy. So you can see them. They're here and now. It's not something you're talking about 50 years down the road or 3 generations from now. And definitively, you've got an entire, very sort of thorough data set that show as energy access, affordability, reliability, costs improve, the quality of life of that individual or that demographic or that nation gets just exponentially better. And the converse is true as well. You take those things away, really bad things happen. Contrast that with sort of the other side that you put out there. Well, the code red and the planet and future generations, not tangible, not measurable, not today, right? Something out into the future, always just over the horizon.
Burning my mind, though. I see those images, I see those titles. I mean, that whether I like it or not, I'm walking away with a certain sense of added stress. That's kind of outside my control.
What's the saying? If it bleeds, it leads, right? That's what journalists always say. You report on sort of the sensational stuff. That's what people want to hear. That's what gets attention. But it's actually gone a step beyond that when it comes to energy policy and climate policies. It's not necessarily if it bleeds, it leads. Now it's turned more into if it bleeds, it leads, and if it doesn't bleed, make it bleed. And right? Just say that.
Put due to climate crisis at the end of it. Because I've noticed that. I don't care if it's above average rainfall. I don't care if it's a car accident on I-10. I don't care if it's a sale at Macy's. It's because of climate crisis. Everything is because of climate crisis. I just saw the Maui fires, which is devastating. That within 48 hours, climate crisis. So it seems like everything, whether climate crisis is a seat at the table, it's always getting called out. Always.
And the beauty of that, in terms of like the ideology and the bigger sort of master plan, game plan of the policy that it would enable, is that you quickly go from it's the climate crisis to, well, what caused the climate crisis? It's now the original sin of the new religion. The original sin is quality of life, whether it's in the Western world today or whether it's with respect to the developing world that wants it tomorrow. So you can quickly go from there's a climate crisis or there will be a climate crisis, abstract, free to define it any way you want, rain over here, fires over there, cold here, hot there, it all fits, right? Any variance fits.
Yep.
And then in the context, most importantly, of, okay, now that I've got your attention on that and your acceptance of that, let's go back to what the root causes are. It's you, it's the individual.
Yes.
It's quality of life. That's the original sin. And until you repent from the sin, And we'll show you through policy edicts and either mandates or regulations that eradicate things, we will show you how you need to repent from that original sin. Then we're not going to avert the catastrophe. So if you think through this logically and sequentially, it's masterful when you consider sort of the combination of this, which is you think about a natural gas stove ban.
Yeah.
Why in the world, how can that ever even be considered in today's world, right? In the United States, think about that logic train. It makes sense at that point, right? We've got a code red. We're going to destroy the abstract tomorrow if we don't act. The problem is a changing climate. I can define changing climate with any story with respect to weather anywhere in the world today.
It's not really, it's never defined. It's just
Right.
There's a crisis.
Like you said, it's hot, it's cold, it rains, it's dry. It doesn't.
Right.
And, here's now a whole host of things that we need to do, because if we don't, you're going to have that original sin that's going to doom humankind. It is masterful when you think of it from a logic perspective. Now, again, the good news is as compelling or as effective as that has been, that will not hold up in the world of physics and science and chemistry and math. That's where the rubber is going to meet the road. The kilowatt hour, it's got to balance. And that's where we're seeing, more and more examples of the symptoms of these things taking root. And the doubling down, I think, that you see is trying to ascribe those symptoms back to the original sort of premise of a changing climate. So I'll give you an example of that. If you look at food inflation, right? UK, Europe, United States, doesn't matter where you look, but food inflation's out of control. In the UK, it's really bad. In Europe, it's horrible. It's changing actually eating habits in Europe. And in the United States, it's not as bad yet, but it's still, food inflation's twice the Federal Reserve's target inflation rate. So it's out of control as well on a relative basis. But if you think through, well, why is there food inflation? Well, because what's one of the key inputs of agriculture? Energy, right? What have energy costs done? What has energy security, energy affordability done? They've gone up.
Yep.
You change energy and you get energy inflation, you're going to get food inflation. But what do you hear more and more with the rhetoric on food inflation? Well, it's because of changing climate. It's because of, drought over here or rainfall over there. And this is going to be more the norm. I don't think so. I think the root cause of food inflation right now, crop yields are looking fine. The root cause of food inflation is energy policies and climate policies. You see the same thing with Ukraine and the war that's going on there. What's going on with respect to the Ukraine and energy prices? Well, that's the cause of energy inflation is the war in the Ukraine and Putin. Back up a step. What caused the war? Why did someone like a Putin feel enabled to invade a country like the Ukraine, not once but twice? And the calculus that he had was Europe, NATO will never intervene or get involved. Why? Well, because they can't. Why?
Yeah.
Because I've got them. How do you have them? I've got them via energy. How did you get that? Well, the climate policies that they passed in the EU in particular shut down their domestic secure sources of the energy portfolio, retired those plants, shut in those gas fields, right? Made a mad dash to something that's intermittent, very difficult to scale, high cost, unreliable, wind, solar, et cetera. And again, here comes the math, here comes the physics. Those kilowatt hours they have to balance. And in Europe's case, they balanced it with something like the Nord Stream pipes. And that created leverage for a Putin who used that leverage in his calculus to invade the Ukraine, which then helped drive up more energy inflation, which drove up food inflation. So these things all have this common root cause. Further evidence that sort of the diabolical genius of all this is that they've picked the one thing in society that affects everything else, which is energy. So the stuff that we're as passionate about, because why we matter and why we love the energy space and domestic energy, that strength, that passion, that pride, it's the very thing that attracted that ideology and that religion to focus in on our space and our industry. Because if you get that one, you've got everything.
But Nick, I love how, and don't, this is a compliment to you, but you're you have trust in the science. You got trust in the data. You got trust in the logic, right? And I love that. I respect that. But however, if you look at the masses, and if you look at, people in masses, whether it's, the witch trials and also, hey, this person's not a witch, just so they can sink, just gonna swim, whatever, it doesn't make them a witch. I was like, I feel we're in the same kind of crossroads of that. Whether it's like, hey, look, you can't heat your home with dung. You can't do this with this. And when you're talking about, I feel like when it comes to the data, when it comes to the actual science behind, look, we understand it because we're in the energy space. Okay, some understand it more than me, obviously. I'm just a good BSing, but we understand the science behind it. However, whenever you're trying to sway crowds, when it comes to science, when it comes to data and all that stuff, that always doesn't correlate to what needs to happen. Like whether it's, this, that, da, da, da. So how do we communicate? And actually, this is kind of probably a good tangent to go on with, your platform, with all this stuff, with the data, with the science behind it. How do someone sitting here listening in their car or at the gym or something like that say, how can I increase my voice? How can I get outside my echo chamber to speak to other people about the energy realities, the energy sciences, and all that stuff? How do we do that? How do we, at the end of the day, you're right. It is all about the science. It is all about this, what can, heat a home, what can't. However, you also have the population fanatics. You also have the people they believe already what they believe. It doesn't matter what science or data you're going to give them. So how does everyday people, because we're all everyday people, how do we get out there and kind of engage in these discussions?
That is a core question. I mean, look at the tagline of Energy Crew with passion fueled. This goes back to sort of a responsibility coupled with a passion. Got a passion for our industry, for what we bring to the world, but there comes with it a responsibility to advocate. Right. Now, you can advocate sort of clinically with data and science. You may choose to advocate, more emotionally with getting people inspired with sort of the presentation and the wrapping of it. And everybody is free to choose to tailor whatever fits their individual dynamic. But in my view, that I've evolved to, frankly, over the past number of years, I've just become convinced that every single person in the energy space, like yourself and many others, right? It just naturally attracts leaders. It doesn't mean you're an executive at an energy company or, you're some sort of talking head on the news programs. Right. I mean, we just attract leaders, from, people tending a well to people working within the support services. It's just an industry and a culture of leadership. So with that leadership comes a responsibility. You're working in the most impactful industry you'll ever want to find in sort of a career or profession track. You've got a sort of a dynamic and a critical mass of leadership in this space. And you've got to disconnect between the ideology and what it's saying and promising versus the reality and what happens in the real world. You know it. So what do? The last missing element of that is that ethical responsibility, that moral responsibility to speak up and advocate your way on issues that you're comfortable with and on platforms and in sort of environments that you're comfortable with. But do it your way, but just do that. Okay. That. And, sort of this goes back and ties back to a lot of philosophical sort of issues between the individual and the collective, or the individual and sort of the bureaucracy. And if you go back to even times with communism in Eastern Europe, right, when the wall came down in Germany and Eastern Europe, Havel, who became the president of Czechoslovakia, he was basically somebody that was not a politician, right? We're not politicians, and we're doers in the energy industry. We're not looking to be politicians, and we're not looking to set policy, those types of things. Neither was he. I think he was a poet. But what he did was he made a determination personally that, as he put it, he became a dissident. And he said, I don't mean a dissident like I was, a political dissident. I was a dissident because the system created a non-reality, false world. And people began to sort of adhere to that false world because they wanted to fit in. There was a inherent pressure to fit in. So the example he used in his story was a shopkeeper that put a sign in the window of Workers of the World Unite. He didn't even know what it meant. He didn't think it through. He did it because sort of everybody did it and the system was rewarding it. Sounds a lot like climate action now, okay? Yeah. And what he did was he said, I made a choice to live, he called it living in truth. I wanted to live in truth, which to me is living in reality. And that's how he found a moral responsibility. And he effectively became a dissident, not because he was against something, because he was for something. He was for living in truth.
Yeah.
And in the energy space, with the leaders that we've got, and with the data and the facts and the reality and science behind us, I think the missing element is sort of copying that playbook from, say, Eastern Europe, right? And it's not just Havel and Eastern Europe, but there's all kinds of other examples from history that say, I'm going to take this responsibility on in a way that suits me, but I'm going to insist civilly that we're going to live in truth. And if we start doing that and advocating for that, and you couple it now with the inevitable symptoms we're going to be seeing popping up everywhere, it will come to the proper sort of reconciliation. Sooner is going to be much better than later. I worry that it's going to be later.
Yeah.
But the sooner we get on this, right, and have the collective responsibility to advocate our way and in the right way, the quicker we get to reconciliation of sort of consistent with reality and the truth.
Nick, I love how you just said that. I love how you just brought up, I mean, because you're right. There are a lot of people out there that, like, oh yeah, we need to do more. We need to be advocates. We need to discuss this. And I love how you just brought it down to the individual. It doesn't matter how you do it. Just do it. Just take a playbook and just go. Take a page of someone's playbook. Take a page of all these people's playbook. Put it together and make your own playbook and just go. Be so vocal. Be advocate.
And that gets into like this. So to help that, to catalyze that, and this gets back to sort of advocacy and what maybe I'm trying to accomplish is one of the key objectives. To help the individual do that, to nurture them, to catalyze them to do that, do things when you advocate that are replicable, that people can sort of take an offshoot and riff off of, right?
Like, what do you mean? Give me an example.
So things with respect to maybe some of the data or some of the positions or views, putting them and exposing them on platforms that those leaders in our industry can see and they can access, and then they take and encouraging them to take that, not because you're looking to make $1 off of it or you're looking for some sort of attention or fame. I'm putting it out there so that people can repurpose it and they can use it. So if for another individual, they're comfortable, maybe not with social media, but they're comfortable with something that's topical in a book club or with respect to a civic organization, they can take that data point and they can repurpose it and help go advocate. They can fuel their advocacy their way.
It's interesting. I was up in Oklahoma City last week and I was talking at the Oklahoma City Pipeliners meeting, and it was about advocacy. How we're all advocates. Like, the only reason I'm an advocate because I got bored. Like I got tired of seeing the same stuff, and that's kind of how the book came. That's how this came. That's how this came. But I was sitting there, and someone from the audience was like, "Oh, why don't can you put this information together about this? How much this powers this home versus this and this home?" I was like, "Yeah, I can do that, but this is what I'm talking. Why don't you do that? If people out there have an idea on how to reframe something or make something a visual and all that stuff, the power is with y'all. Like, do it. Create something. Like, don't look for, yes, you're right, repurpose it. But if there's something out there that you have thought about, like, oh, this would be such an interesting way to portray this thought, I highly encourage you out there just to do it. Just put it together, put it out there. And someone might pick that up who's a content designer and kind of, polish it up a little bit. But that's how you do it. You create it too.
You repurpose it or you customize it. And you can do that internally with either what you're doing individually or within the team that you're on. I'll give you an example for us. It's CNX Resources. That's a great sort of illustration of this. So we've got these core tenets and sort of the data and what's going on with realities of energy and the physics of the energy space and what drives economies. And we're working and advocating with respect to those individual points, item by item. And then we say, let's couple that in the context of developing maybe a mission, a path forward for the region being for us, Appalachia. And what it led to was sort of reforming that and tailoring that into what we call Appalachia First, which is, again, a path for not just the energy industry, but frankly, resurrecting manufacturing and the middle class, and specifically in underserved urban and rural communities all through Appalachia, Western PA, Eastern Ohio, West Virginia, Western Virginia, up and down sort of the Appalachian Basin. So Appalachia First, it starts with a passion And it does speak largely to the energy space as being one of those core pillars of it.
Right.
And it's in a region that we care tremendously about. But where we put that together to make it fit into a really compelling, coherent path forward for the region was basically taking those different data points, those different items, and aggregating them in a way where, hey, here's what it could mean for this region and with respect to these types of issues. So it can work a number of different ways. That's the beauty of it. But the core goes back to, like, we care, we drive everything, we got natural leaders, and again, the data, science, they're in our favor. So let's find a way now to couple all that with sort of that drive to get up in the morning and do what you do, right? Look at what you've done with regard to kids and young adults with getting that message out and mentoring and getting sort of the energy realities out there in front of them. That's what you're passionate about. Look what it's done. Look at the impact it's had. You start rolling that up cumulatively, we'll get there. We will get there because it's just the cumulative nature of it, coupled with all these things that are happening now, that these symptoms of ill-advised energy policy and climate policies are starting to manifest in.
So first off, thank you, and I also want to tie into kind of what y'all are doing as well. I kind of want to look. We're coming up on 36 minutes. There's two things I kind of want to talk to you about real briefly before we wrap this up. I know your time's busy, and I'm in Denver on airport Wi-Fi, so I'm not sure how reliable it is. The first thing I want to discuss with you about is, I think since our first conversation, that's when you first started really find your groove into being more vocal about advocacy. You already wrote your book. You already started doing your podcast and all that stuff. So since our first podcast, you've had kind of this space, this stage that's kind of evolving and building. And I know it hasn't been that long ago, but there has been tremendous movements, tremendous, I guess, strides that you've made. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is, since you started this journey, your personal journey on being a more vocal advocate, not that long ago, what have you seen, I guess, as a direct, impact? I guess what I'm trying to say is, are you waking up in the mornings more frustrated because of the same rhetoric, and you're thinking, oh, I just put out all this information and no one's picking it up? Or is it like, I am helping people out. There is slight chinks in the armor that I'm kind of getting there, that I'm kind of helping mold something maybe potentially in the near future. So I know I'm kind of rambling, but I'm kind of giving you space to think about that. But I guess since you started your advocacy vocal journey, are you seeing a different kind of environment that you're engaging with, the conversations you're having?
I do. I think you can get that perception and that feedback from different perspectives. I'll give you one. One example is I feel that there are continuing growing indications that individuals that were on the fence with respect to this advocacy responsibility, this ethical duty, doing what you do, doing what we all do, that gives them confidence. It gives them comfort that they can do that as well. So I think a lot of people that were on the fence are started falling into the advocacy bucket, right? And that just, again, that amplifies, that increases spread. That's a really good thing. That's a great sort of impact or legacy to think that you might have, right? I think another implication is that, again, this is sort of what you're doing, what you say as an industry, as leaders in the industry like yourself, coupled with the times. So what you're advocating for, JP, is coming ideally, in some ways non-ideally, but nevertheless, it's coming at a time when these problems and these issues that you're talking about, you're seeing them everywhere. You're seeing them in California. I was just talking to somebody from California. Everybody's seeing them everywhere. Europe, developing world, United States, Appalachia, California, right? Colorado, Denver, doesn't matter. So the times, I think, are in some ways made for this type of an effort to have an outsized impact. And I think those two things, so when these symptoms pop up, when these problems pop up in the world, driven by poor energy policy or climate policy, it's just, it's applicable, and it draws interest and attention to people that you're trying to reach with a message, to think this through and maybe pay attention.
All right. So it is changed. So little by little, pretty much, little
Little
by
by
little,
little. And
we'll
that,
get.
and that I get more positive, upbeat, and encouraged by the day and by the week versus frustrated.
That's
So
so
I
awesome.
think that's been a good trend to see as well. And I suspect you feel the same way with regard to what you've accomplished and what you're doing and
Yeah.
what you're achieving.
Yeah, I mean, but that takes a lot of personal focus too, because a lot of times, I mean, you wake up and you see the same old stuff, or you can't even read. Just as I said, whether there's traffic or whether there's like, I need new tires on my truck or my car, it's climate crisis. So that stuff kind of frustrates me. But you're right to kind of sit there and kind of hear the feedback and hear, hey, look, I'm inspired to do this and that. Like, just seeing the kids at the kids crew stuff. Like, you're right. There is a sense of kind of like, okay, this is what it's all about. This is fun. This is cool to kind of have that impact. And speaking of impact, great segue, by the way, Nick. Speaking of impact and the next generation, helping out different communities, I would love for you to talk about the CNX Mentorship Academy. Because when we first talked about it, I think y'all just had y'all's first class graduate or something like that. I would love for you to talk about real brief elevator spiel on what this academy is and where y'all are at currently, because I think it's so awesome what y'all are doing for the youth in the community, for people that might not have the opportunities that other people have. And I would love for you to kind of plug that and kind of also let us know how people can get involved in what you're doing. And also, hopefully, maybe there's some leaders out there that want to replicate what y'all are doing.
Great points to that opportunity. Thank you for that. And yeah, we're in our third year now. Hard to believe. The basic premise is simple. We're looking to find seniors, typically in high school, that don't intend to go to college right out of high school, that are coming from the region's urban and rural underserved communities. So urban, rural, underserved areas or zip codes, students that are about to exit high school, they want a career path, they want a professional path, but they don't want to go to college. They're not immediately interested in college. So, the things that we do through the course of the year when we bring in a class are opening them up, their eyes up to those types of industries that have those opportunities. And energy is one of them that's front and center, of course, and spending days with them, immersing them into what does it look like to work in energy? What does it look like to work in manufacturing, a building trade, healthcare, hospitality, those different types of industries. But the other things, that we work on with them individually, of course, are building a resume, and not just then building the resume, but once you got that initial resume built, let's go fill that thing out over the course of the year. Okay.
Yeah.
And that builds confidence. How do you do an interview? Right. And like we'll go through mock interviews. That builds confidence. How do you dress when you're going to go to the interview? I mean, here's a suit. Here's a professional business attire for one of the female students. And then from a male perspective, here's a tie. Here's how, you basically are expected to prepare for that type of an interview.
I saw, not to interrupt, but I saw something, I think it was like 2 months ago or something like that. Or I feel like it was 2 months. Who knows? Time flies. But it was something where you had the students, I think, right before their interviews, all dressed up, suited up, and all that stuff ready to go. And I was like, that gave me chills. I'm like, I love seeing what y'all are doing. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah,
Go on.
game changer. And then, working on things that basically get them placed into those career paths coming out of high school. And that's a whole bunch of different things, because this is life, right? We're talking about reality again, where it might be a driver's license. You don't have a driver's license, you're not going to get a job. But then to get a driver's license, there's a whole bunch of things you need to get prior to that, physicals and birth certificates. And
Yeah.
it's not as easy as you think, particularly for young adults in rural and urban underserved communities. So what we've found out is that every individual student's different. Everybody's their own individual. And if you've got, this year we're pushing, I think, 80 students in the third year's class,
So
you've got 80 different stories.
So the first year class was what was that? It was like 30 something,
30,
and then you had
maybe 30,
and then you had
45.
40,
Yeah.
and
So it
then
went
now
from
you're going
30 to 45 to pushing 80 now. And it's scaling. Our partners are scaling. So all these different companies and partners, you mentioned the dress attire, the business dress attire. There's an entity we partner with, Dress for Success, that does that. So like we've got a great team that we've aggregated. And you asked about like, well, what's next? What do you do with this? We built it. We open coded this. It's open sourced. So anybody can come in to the company. You can copy everything we've done, and you can sort of build one out in Denver, where you're at. You can build one out in Houston,
So
or you can join this one if you're in the region. So you can build your own and replicate it. Plagiarism is encouraged. You can join the effort if you're interested in joining what we've got going on. And that's how basically you scale this thing. Very similar to what we talked about with advocacy. And I can tell you this, like it's very challenging, but the end result, is my expectation that we're going to have out of 80 students in the third year class, 80 that are placed in these family sustaining career paths within those industries that I mentioned. That's my goal. That's not my expectation because, again, this is the real world. Yeah. But my expectation and my goal is that every single one of those students, all 80, will be markedly in a better position and better prepared for the journey of life, professionally and just as a person, coming out of the year than they did coming into the year. They'll be more confident. They'll 100%. Be in a better place. And they will, if nothing else, they will have a network that they've developed through the course of this year that it's a network that, like, I wish I had that when I was 18 years old, going out and trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. They've got a very impressive network. Now it's up to them at that point to take it where they will and to use it how they see fit. But that's true for anybody in any situation. So Mentorship Academy has been a huge success with the CNX Foundation. It can be like we get our butts kicked, JP. Like success is not a guarantee. We stumble and we will fail as often as we succeed. But it's one of those things that's trial and error, student by student. And the more we're willing to get our nose bloodied on this stuff, the better the outcomes, the better the rate of return.
I wish I had a great conclusion of this, but what an inspiring, awesome thing you are doing. And I loved how you tied in the network side of things. That's my business, building networks. And it's so important. And you're right. I mean, 18 years old, not a lot of opportunities. Suddenly, in this thing, you make all these connections, you make all these networks. I love that. I think it's so cool introducing people to the energy realm because, our industry is plagued with stereotypes, the uneducated roughneck or the rich, old white dude who's dumping oil behind the orphanage in a third world country. But however, it's, engineers, it's problem solvers, it's leaders, it's entrepreneurs, it's tech gurus, it's AI geniuses, it's marketing experts. It's such an awesome space to be in. And it's so outdated from the stereotypes that we deal with, and the opportunity that's here. It's just, it's head over heels. I love it. So, Nick, I want to thank you for your time. And honestly, if anyone wants to get out there and get involved and check in with Nick and kind of find out what their Mentorship Academy is all about and what they're doing for the community up there and how you can probably plagiarize and replicate it for wherever you're listening to. So, Nick, any last thoughts to kind of feed us in? If not, I appreciate your time. Thank you for tuning in. And again, second round on Energy Crew.
No, I'm grateful for the opportunity and proud to be affiliated with you, JP. You're doing great work. Keep it up. Let me know what you need.
I'm just in the shadows of your shadow, brother. So thank you, and we'll talk to you soon. And thank you everyone out there for tuning in Energy Crew, and we will see you in the next round.